So in this section, we're going to talk about some identity security services, particularly multi-factor authentication. Now, what is multi-factor authentication? Now, one of the big challenges with security these days is that people have user IDs and passwords, and no matter how complicated your password is, if it's 16 digits, contains letters, numbers, symbols, capitals, and funny foreign letter characters in the same password, if that password gets lost, someone breaks into your computer and steals it, or something becomes easy to guess, etc., that allows somebody to log in as you and basically be able to take over what it is that you have control over. So a user ID and password is not entirely secure simply because it can be lost. Now, when you add another factor to it, then that becomes even more secure. In this case, when they're talking about multi-factor authentication, it's either having a device, whether it could be your phone, or in the old days they used to have key fobs with randomized numbers on them, or it could be a fingerprint or an eye scan, etc., retina scan. So the multi-factor authentication refers to having more than just your password as a way of authenticating. And that's why it becomes more and more common for you to require your phone, and either you get an SMS message, you get an email, or you get a randomized number in an application that you have to type in order to log in just beyond your password. Now, Microsoft Azure Active Directory does support this. Either you have to pay for it, so it is available as an add-on service. It costs $1.40 per month per user, so there is a billing model associated with that, unless you're a premium Active Directory user. So if you are running on a premium plan, then it is included in that plan. Now, how do you turn on Active Directory? So in this particular case, I go into Users. Now I have a mixture of native users, Azure Active Directory, and invited users. Invited users in this case are B2B. These are Gmail accounts in this particular case. Email went out to them, they accepted, and they are part of my Active Directory, but they are not Active Directory members because their email address isn't a controlled domain. So we have this new user and guest user concept. So once I'm in the users section of my Active Directory, you'll see it says multi-factor authentication at the top. When I click this, it's actually going to take me out of the portal into a separate website. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and we can see it is a Microsoft website, but it's basically completely different than the portal, and it's opened in a new tab on my browser actually. Now, out of my 5 users, remember 2 of them are actually Active Directory users and 2 of them are Gmail users, which are B2B. So I can actually only enable multi-factor authentication for 2 of those users. You can't enable it for users that are not part of your Active Directory as native users. So I've chosen the 2 of them, and I can click Enable. Now it says about enabling multi-factor. Basically, they're going to have to sign in through the web browser in order to sign up for multi-factor authentication. If they access your services through their app, through some other method, might not actually work. So here's a link to how these individual users, Joe Green and John Doe, can sign up for MFA. But I control them, and so I can actually enable multi-factor. So now I've enabled multi-factor authentication on 2 users in my account, and that's basically how easy it is. Now, if I remember, this is a separate tab. I can close the tab, go back to the portal. Now, keep in mind that there is an impact on the support, basically, for your Active Directory. So now that you've got users that are forced to use multi-factor authentication, what you're going to end up with doing is people have their ID, they have their password, but they don't have their phone. their battery has died, they lose their phone, or they changed their phone number but they didn't migrate their multi-factor authentication. So there is another point of support once you make it more complicated for people to log in. But remember, security is not about convenience. Security in some ways is the opposite of convenience, because the more convenient you make something, the less secure it generally is. You're going to have to introduce things like this, having to have your phone to answer an SMS text or an app in order to log into your system as a way to increase security.